We finally reach Dr. Breen's office and two snowmen relieve us of our blue gravity gun. I'd like to point out the interesting insignia on the left arm of the snowman. It's based upon the general Combine insignia, but in place of the stylized sphere in the center, this one has a human skull with a large crack on the top. I find this insignia fascinating because normally the Combine does not express any kind of emotion, as it were. While the Combine's oppressive regime is cruel and horrifying, it achieves this not by actively seeking to be terrifying, but simply by being itself. The Snowman's insignia, on the other hand, is a deliberate attempt to portray these elite Combine soldiers as brutal and deadly. I think you'll agree that the insignia resembles nothing quite so much as the Totenkopf insignia of the Waffen-SS. Judith Mossman is here, which is, I guess, not a terrible surprise, considering she's the one who teleported herself and Eli here from Nova Prospekt, though for what possible purpose we can only guess. Traitorous wretch. Or is she? Now, as always, Mossman's position within the plot is ambiguous and confusing. I always like this sequence as we're whisked away into Breen's office and we can hear him talking to Eli about the vastness and wonder of the universe. The dialogue throughout Half-Life 2 is really quite good. The writing is never dumbed down, even when the dialogue becomes technical, albeit fictitiously so. However, nowhere, I think, is the excellent writing more apparent than in the dialogue of Dr. Breen. Robert Culp, who provides the voice for Dr. Breen, really does a fantastic job of portraying this character's elitism and ambitiousness through his sonorous, melodious speech. I personally see a great deal of similarities between the character of Dr. Breen and the character of Andrew Ryan from the game BioShock. Both men are far-sighted, ambitious, intelligent, and industrious, yet both are men living in desperate circumstances, and have even been driven a little bit mad as a result of their dire predicament. Now, I do not doubt that Breen may have originally had humanity's best interests at heart, but the Combine does not negotiate anything. He may have bitten off more than he could chew, and in the end he seems intent merely to save himself at any and all costs. This final scene in which we finally confront Breen, and I do say confront despite the fact that Gordon, as always, does not say a word, is a pivotal point in the story, for at this moment we realize for the first time that Breen is under intense pressure to either keep Earth in line or else be removed from power and or worse. Breen has always tried to come across as a kindly benefactor, but in this final showdown he has resorted to threatening Alex in order to intimidate Eli, and all but begging Gordon to aid him, despite the fact that he's been admonishing Gordon or even trying to kill him throughout the game. Mossman has a last-minute change of heart and decides to save everyone's lives after all. It's about bloody time. The best part of this scene is when Dr. Breen picks up the gravity gun but can barely lift up the same device that Alex had no problem elevating to waist height. Breen zaps us and is able to escape on the lift. There's a short touching scene in which Mossman comforts the now free Eli, and remarkably Eli is not even slightly upset about Mossman's activities that nearly led to the death of both himself and his daughter. That's a very forgiving man. As we chase after Breen, we hear him speaking to the advisor. This is really one of the most remarkable bits of dialogue in the game, when he reveals that he will teleport to some unknown destination and exist inside of a host body simply in order to survive. See what I said about him being desperate? For all of Breen's supposed intelligence, he flees without taking the enormously destructive blue gravity gun with him. How unfortunate for him and how terribly convenient for us. Now, Alex explains to us that the only way to stop Breen now is to follow him into the fusion reactor and destroy the teleport itself. She reminds us not to forget the gravity gun. Oh, you're a lamb, Alex, thank you. I never would have remembered to take along the only weapon available to me. This final battle in the Dark Fusion Reactor has always seemed to me to be almost anticlimactic. As I stated before, the battle for the building by the horse statue is for me the culmination of the game. This point just seems to be like an additional afterthought. Now, part of perhaps even all of the reason for this may be that the ending is simply a setup for the sequels that are to follow. This battle in the reactor is relatively easy compared to many other parts of the game, and we quickly make our way to the top by hopping on levitating pedestals in a way that is not completely unlike Mario Brothers. Except that there are no turtles or mushrooms here, thank God. As we get to the top, we see the portal actually appear in space, and this is really a remarkable effect, as we can see through to this other world in which are other citadel-like structures rising into the cloudy orange sky. Since we're equipped with only the gravity gun, the solution seems obvious. Shoot energy balls at the focal point of the teleport. Blammo! It's a piece of cake if you're Dr. Freeman. The teleport collapses and we hear a final wailing utterance from Dr. Breen. Alex jumps through the broken glass in excitement to congratulate our job well done, when suddenly time seems to come to a standstill and we hear a very familiar voice. Now, almost everyone loves a mystery, and nothing in the Half-Life series is quite as mysterious as the actions and intentions of the G-Man. Not only do we know next to nothing about this character, but even the sparse clues we can gather about him are ambiguous at best. My own personal theory is that the G-Man is an operative in a faction opposing the Combine. At the very least, it's quite certain that he is not human, as he possesses almost supernatural powers. Now, whatever the reality is concerning the G-Man, one thing is certain: his manners leave something to be desired. After playing Gordon like a harp, he appears out of nowhere, interrupting Gordon's moment of glory in order to snatch him away for some unknown purpose, perhaps even to place him in another decades-long suspended animation. So, we depart Half-Life 2 just as we entered it, a hapless victim of ambiguity. Clearly there will be a sequel to this, right? I just hope we don't have to wait a year and a half to find out what happens. God, I hate cliffhanger endings. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed watching this commentary as much as I've enjoyed creating it. At the very least, I hope you do not feel bored or nauseous, because I will be the first to admit that listening to my lilting Anglo-American twaddle for an hour and a half is physically and emotionally exhausting. I'll tell you what, if you weren't entertained, please contact the following folks who'd be happy to provide you with a refund. And speaking of Valve, I feel it may be important to point out that I'm in no way associated with Valve Software. They neither paid me nor even gave me permission to produce this. In fact, if I've broken any copyright laws here, I feel it is imperative to note that I am prepared to flee the country at a moment's notice. So, stay in school, kids, because trust me, you don't want to be 33 years old and producing documentaries about video games. Cheerio, everyone.
Last night they loved you, opening doors and pulling some strings.